Hello and welcome. This is Jenny Clarker Solvability Training, and today I'd like to take a look at the Contracts module within GCS Premier. I'm going to show you how to set up a contract, show you the screens that you need to go through for that process, how to set the billing information for a contract. Then we're going to go enter some timesheets for the contract, process them all the way through, create a contracts report, create a billing, and show you how it all comes together. So let's get started. First off, I'm here in the main GCS Premier menu. I'm going to double click on Contracts. It's a little slow today. And you can see I've got all these menus, but the only one I'm worrying about right now is called Setup Files. Under Setup Files, this is an overwhelming list, but you know what? There's only about 4 of them we're going to use. I'm just going to show you those. We'll be using first the contract master file. That's where we're going to put the basics in about the contract, the number you want to assign, the contract value, the start and end date, who's your client, who's your program manager, where the billing information goes, and last and probably the most important, what type of contract is it? Is it a time and material contract, meaning it bills rate times hours? Is it a cost plus contract, meaning it takes direct cost plus overhead, general administrative, and then a profit or fee? Or is it a fixed price contract, which is a fixed amount for the value of the contract, and there's several different ways to recognize the revenue and to do the billing on it. After we go over the contract master file, we're going to the contract labor category file. For government contracts, when you bid them, you tend to bid them not by individual employees, but by labor categories. How many hours of a program manager? How many hours of a senior engineer? How many hours of a technician? Those are the contract labor categories we'll be setting up, and they can be different for every contract that you've got. If it's a time and material contract, we're also going to say, hey, for that program manager, what's my billing rate going to be? And set those up. The last step we'll do under contracts is the contract workforce file. What that does is maps the individuals in your company, employees in your company, which one's the program manager, which one's the senior engineer. So it'll be these 4 steps, 1, 2, 3 if it's T&M, and then 4. After we've gone over the contracts, our next step is going to be to set up the billing information, because we want it to be set up so it'll automatically calculate the billing at the end of the month. That's going to be under Billing and Accounts Receivable. Again, long list, only one piece that we're going to need for this. Setup files. And here in the middle is called the Billing Master. We're going to be very similar to the Contract Master file, but we're going to add a little bit more information about the billing. There's a place to put the header for the billing. There's a place to choose the information you want printed at the top of the bill, whether you want to show the contract value or not. There's also settings to say, do you want to show just the current period on the billing, or do you also want to show the cumulative amount? So, looks pretty simple. I'm going to run back over to contracts. Again, setup files. And let's go to contract master file. Under the contract master file, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at one that I've already got set up so you can take a look and see what it looks like. A couple ways that I could do this, but what I usually do is type in the first 2 letters or so of the job that I'm trying to look up, and then you hit these binoculars. Binoculars means find. Go find me what I've got. So if I know the first few letters, that's the easiest way to go. Hit binoculars, and here it is. It's bringing in the project that I set up the other day called Missile Test. In this case, Missile Test has 2 components, a labor CLIN, which I'm calling here Task 1, and a travel CLIN called Task 2. How I assign this number up here, my limitation is just that it's a 4-digit number, and it could have alpha numbers. It doesn't have to, but I chose it that way so it ended up at the bottom of my list. You can have more than one. It has, in this case, 1 task, but you could have multiple tasks. Sometimes your task will be more like design the missile, test the missile, go through a missile quality assurance. That could be 3 tasks, but you can have as many tasks as you need to have. What I started with here is I typed in the name of the task, what division it's associated with, and for most small companies I usually end up with just one division, but later on we could go and add those. The project manager, and I try to type that in consistently. In this case, really what I should have done is had Baldwin, comma B, so that if I have reports later on that I want to use, I can sort them easily, but as long as it's consistently spelled, it'll work. Over here to the right, I've got what type of contract it is, and really that's not the right thing. It's an account type. I can have a contract, a work in process, a bid and proposal, or an IR&D. Why is that important? What this allows me to do is I can have different types of accounting treatment for jobs. And most of the jobs that I'm setting up are C for contract. But I also have, when I prepare a proposal, I would like to know how much I spent to get that to do the proposal work, because I'm having to pull in people from other parts of the company. And I want to be able to compare how much do I spend on proposals and what did it take me to win, and get an idea of how to do that. And then the last thing is IR&D. You know, everybody's got great ideas, and somebody may walk in and say, hey, how about I spend a little bit of money, see what we can do with this. And I want to track that if they're going to spend some money. That is part of my allowable general administrative cost. Okay, so I'm just going to choose C for contract. I'll type in the client name. And then under contract type, I've got three choices. One is fixed price, two is cost plus, and three is time and materials. Fixed price just means that at the end of the job, I will have received a payment amount for what I completed. An example of a fixed price contract is if I hired somebody to paint my office for $500. When the office paint is done, I give them $500. Okay, let's say I say that I'm going to print my entire office building, and I think it's going to take a couple months. That might be, say, a $50,000 job, and I might let them bill me monthly for 3 months or something along that line. But the question of fixed price is what are the billing terms that you've agreed to with your customer, and then also how do you recognize the revenue? Am I going to say, okay, I've got 10 offices, and when they complete each office, I'll take 1/10 of the revenue, or am I going to look at the size of the office, or I'm going to wander around and say it's 80% complete or 90% complete? How do I want to do that so that they don't wander off when I've got half of each office finished and they just kind of quit? Okay. That's a fixed price contract. A cost plus contract, these are used typically for jobs that are larger in scale, where it's hard to estimate the cost because as you get into it, there's going to be other things to be concerned about. NASA uses a lot of cost plus contracts, and when you have large contracts with, let's say, 40 to a couple hundred people on them, lots of times those will be cost plus. A cost plus is used when some of the scope of the work cannot be fully defined, and they know that they need to have a team of people working on it. But as far as how the contract is managed, they want to make sure that the contractor is reimbursed for the costs they're incurring. That's going to include their direct cost, like labor, their travel and material they're expending for the contract, an applied overhead or G&A rate, and then a reasonable profit percent or fee. And that profit percent or fee is going to vary, but for most cost plus contracts, it's going to be in the 6 to 8% range. The third type that I've got a choice from is a very simple one, time and material, which means I'm going to pay you for the hours that you've worked at an agreed upon fixed billing rate. And so every time that you spend 2 hours as a program manager, I'm going to let you bill for that 2 hours times the agreed on program manager rate of $100 an hour. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of this screen. You can see I've got something called settings for all contract types. Under this time and material button, I'll be able to go to the time and material settings. If I change this and it's a cost plus, I can't go to time and materials anymore. I can go to cost plus though. I'm going to change it back the way it was. Okay, the settings for all contract types is the general information that describes that contract. The prime contract number. Whenever you have to prepare an incurred cost submission at the end of the year, they're going to ask you what the prime contract number. You should know if you're a prime, but sometimes as a sub you might not have that information. See if you can find out from your whoever your prime is. Normally it's on the paperwork somewhere. The other contract number is, again, if you were a subcontractor, your prime is going to issue a separate number for that, and this would be the prime's number, whoever you're subbing to. You can fill out the contact and the phone number if you want to. That would typically be the contracting person that you talk to. A lot of people keep that in another system anyway. Up here to the right, there's a number of buttons. The main one that you want to check is called the contract workforce. What that's going to do is say, don't let anybody charge to this contract unless they're listed on the contract workforce. That's one of the key controls in your accounting system to make sure that you're going to be able to bill and manage this contract correctly. Cost of money really doesn't come into play very often. Cost of money is an imputed interest cost that you can charge to the government. Interest is unallowable, but if you have investment in your building, a bunch of equipment, specialized tooling and things like that, they're saying, hey, I understand because you're doing this contract, you're going to have some interest expense. Interest expense is unallowable, but I'll give you an allowance for it. But I really don't run into cost of money very often, and when I do, it's usually for one of the very large contractors. They'll always have it. Commercial, you don't have to check. What this does is when you're preparing your incurred cost submission at the end of the year, there'll be boxes of where you put the section for government contracts and commercial contracts. While from a general standpoint, if you're a subcontractor, that is a commercial contract, I use this button to say, does it go in the government section or does it go in the commercial section? Level of effort requirements don't come up very often, and all this is going to end up being is a flag on the contract report itself that says level of effort required. Sometimes you'll see a CPFF LOE, cost plus fixed fee, level of effort. And what that means is they've designated that you're going to deliver 1,000 hours. Once you deliver that 1,000 hours, you're able to bill for your full fee. Consultants permitted is just a database field. It doesn't do anything, but people use it so that if they have consultants on the job, they've marked it to say those have been allowed to be charged. But it doesn't really prevent you from having consultants. It's more of a database field. The priority code doesn't come into play very often, but when you have large or material contracts, there'll be codes. A common one is D082A2, or there's a DX rating. What that's supposed to do is when you print your purchase orders, it will give a priority in the queue to fill your orders before everybody else's orders. So it's been important when there's an altercation going on. These two fields, reference 1 and reference 2, we're not going to be using. If you have some very specific additional codes that you need, we might turn those on, but I don't use them very often. The billing address, this is very important. The billing address is where you type in the name of the company on the first line and the street address and the city, state, and zip. Sometimes you need more information like attention Patty Blake or a mail stop number or something like that. When that's the case, you can go over here to the correspondence address and you put the very first character as an asterisk, and then you put the next information. And save that. Okay, so we've talked about the very first page of this contract. Now what we want to do is talk about what I call the money page. The money page is where you put the value of the contract. Why do you care? Okay, it matters because you don't want to overrun the contract. Every time you're spending any money or any time on this, you always want to be looking in terms of, okay, I've spent this, how much have we got left? If my customer walks in the door and says, hey Jenny, how many hours have you used? I need to be able to tell that customer right now. And I need to be able to say, oh, I've used 67 hours, I billed $99,000, so I'll need to put in a request for some additional hours soon. I want to make sure that I'm asking my customer a little bit far enough in advance for them to get the paperwork authorized so I don't have a delay on payment. But the other thing I do is I need to make sure that I've got agreement with that customer before I go over the limit that they've given me. So up here I've got my contract value. This fee amount you're only going to need on a cost plus contract. With cost plus contracts, they typically give you an amount for cost and then a separate line for fee, or the fee pool. What that does is establish a relationship between your fee or profit on the contract and how much your cost is to expend. So there are times where when you're running out of money on the contract, you might be overrunning the cost, or you might be overrunning the fee, or you might be overrunning both, but you do need to keep track of those separately. The other reason the fee pool will go separately on a cost plus contract, occasionally you'll have situations where you have fee withholding or retainage, where you're allowed to bill for your contract fee as you go along, but only 85% of the fee earned, or you can bill all the fee as you go along, but only up to 85% of the total fee pool. That's called retainage. Over on the dates that we've got entered here, we've got a starting date and an end date. What that's going to do is you have to report it whenever you're doing, say, an incurred cost audit, but you also want to make sure that people aren't charging past the end date, because you're only authorized here to go to 9/30/2009. And if you want to go beyond that date, or you have money left over and you're almost finished, you need to go back to your customer and get an extension. Down in the bottom, I've also completed the funded amount. Sometimes you'll get a contract that's called incrementally funded. That means that they may have given you a $3 million contract, but they're only going to give you $150,000 or so at a time. Those are incremental fundings. Under the funding, if I don't have other information and it's not a large contract, I'm just going to make the assumption that the amount that they gave me for contract value is fully funded. The boxes down here to the left are usually checked, automatically compute this contract revenue. What does that do? Okay, you got this Delta system for a reason, and that's because you knew it would automate the method by which you recognize revenue. So what this does is turns on that feature. By default, whenever you set up a new contract, that's going to be turned on. And whenever you're setting up anything in GCS, if you have a question, you're not sure about the answer, take the default, because that's the most common answer. You can also, though, if you needed more help, you can click up here and the help button. If you're inside a screen, it is context sensitive, and it's going to show me down here under the contract master file what those codes mean. Oh, I'm on a different page. I'm on the money page. So let me go back one, and I'm on the T&M page, and here's it's talking starting and ending date, automatically compute this contract revenue. Okay, on a time and material contract, these are some very important things to understand. Where it says include ODCs in the revenue amount. An ODC stands for other direct cost, and in this case it mainly means non-labor. If I have a job that has two tasks, a labor task and a travel task, and I'm using consultants, they're going to send me a bill for their cost, aren't they? They'll put their hours in the labor category, so they'll identify it to me so I can bill it. But that consultant cost at that point is non-labor. So if I'm going to have consultants on this job, I want to uncheck the button that says include ODCs in the revenue amount. By doing that, their hours will be billed when I create the bill, but not the cost. If I don't check that box, I could end up accidentally when I calculate the bill, it'll calculate both the revenue that I'm earning on their hours plus the cost. Okay, I'm going to hit save. There are a couple buttons down here that I normally don't check, but once in a while I get a contract in and I know we started the work, but I don't really have any paperwork on it. So I might set it up with some basic information, and I either will put a small amount for contract value, or I'll put a code here. I'll click the button that says sales may exceed contract value by, and what this will do is allow me to come back and check and see if I've got the paperwork in later. There's also a button for override auto sales with percent fee, but I can't see too many situations where I'd use that. Okay, so we've talked about missile test labor, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then here's missile test travel. They gave me $20,000 for missile test travel. It's got the dates in there. The front page is all the same. And here I am checking include ODCs and revenue amount, because travel is an ODC. And I do want to pick that up as my revenue. If I spend $10,000 worth of travel, that's my revenue plus the burden on the travel. That's what this is. Apply indirect cost to ODC amounts. Your burden on the travel is going to be your general administrative cost. So yeah, I'm allowed to bill for that, and I do want to include that in my revenue. Another thing that I didn't point out earlier is over here on the right hand side, when I clicked the box for automatically compute this revenue, these buttons light up. And I want to leave it as normal method. What is normal method? Normal method means use the system's normal method for processing revenue. There's actually a special topic in Deltek GCS Premier documentation called How the System Computes Revenue, and I can certainly provide that to you. But here's how it works. On a time and material contract, it's going to take the hours incurred in the current accounting period, usually the month, times the T&M billing rate that's in the T&M billing screen. When we go in there, you'll see that. And that's going to what it's going to calculate for revenue. If it does have ODCs and these boxes are checked, that's where it's going to pick up additional revenue. That's the normal method. On a cost plus contract, the normal method is direct labor that's incurred. That's going to be what you process through timesheets and what got onto the job itself as expense, labor expense, plus your applied indirect expenses such as fringe, overhead, and G&A, and then a fee percent. If it's a cost plus, you would normally put in a fee. For a fixed price contract, there's several different ways to do it. The way I usually do it, if I have not very much other information, is I treat it as if it were a cost plus contract, but I'll look at what we bid, and if we put 15% fee in our bid, I'll recognize 15% as we go along. There are a number of other ways to do that. The other way I could do this is based on billing. Some people like to use based on billing because they say, well, I'm only going to pick up revenue for what I billed. I don't want to claim revenue if I wasn't able to bill it. That's good. But as you grow, there's going to be a little more complicated situations. There will be exceptions to that. The other reason I don't like to use based on billing is I have to wait until the very end of the month. I've got all my costs in, then I do my bills, then I post my billings, then I run my revenue. I like to look at my revenue in the middle of the month if I feel like it. I want to make it so that I don't have to wait for a billing cycle to see how we're doing. That way, if the boss comes in and says, hey, Jenny, how's it looking? I want to be able to say, I've got all these contracts and here's how much revenue we've got so far this month. It gives it kind of a warm fuzzy. It's just easier to be able to get that information as you go on a regular basis than it is to have to wait till the end of the month. Or sometimes, because of the whole amount of time that a month-end closing process takes, it might be that I'm close on, my cutoff for the month might be July 31st. I've got a bill, and then I've got to run all my closing process. So I might not be able to give my boss the answer until the 10th of August. I don't like that. I think they deserve information all the time as fast as I can produce it. Okay, so back to here. I'm going to go click it as normal method, and we're going to go from there. Oh, when it did that, it unchecked this box. So let me fix that again. Okay, this is a T&M contract. We started with the contract master file. Didn't mean to click that. Our next thing that we have done on a T&M contract is gone to the labor category file. This is where we say, hey, this job has a program manager and a couple other codes, so we're going to set those up. Now remember I said as you hit ST or something to get the first few letters of the job, hit binoculars, and it pulls up what I've already got set up. One important thing is over here it's got rate and fringe. Ignore that. On this page, ignore that. If you're not sure why we're ignoring that, there's a note down here at the bottom left, which has nothing to do with that. The rate and fringe are only used if you have service contracts. Those basically set minimum wages for certain non-exempt categories, like a truck driver. If you're bidding on a big contract with truck drivers on it, there's a minimum rate established for a truck driver, or a photographer, or a clerical. And what they're trying to do is make sure that a contract isn't bid where you bring in the entire workforce that used to be there and cut their rates, and that's how you make profit. That's how you win your job. That's what a service contract is. We have certain minimum wages for labor categories on a service contract act. So anyway, for these categories, I created a category of program manager, and I just typed that in, SE for senior engineer and T3 for technician. I happen to have typed it in with a PM and a colon space program manager, the same thing, SE senior engineer. When we look at the billing, you'll see why I did that, because some reports show the labor category and the labor category description, and others just show the labor category name. So I do this as a convention because I like to be able to see the code. By the time you get senior engineer, senior systems engineer, senior logistician, you end up with a lot of codes and you can't always remember which one is which. These are alphanumeric. You could make them numbers like 01, 02, 03, and it's up to you which ways you want to do it. It seems like you run out of codes a little bit anyway, so whatever you want to do with that is fine. Okay, that's the labor category file. So we did contract master file in ST01, then the labor category file. The labor category file, all it did was define the labor category codes. It didn't tell me what rate I bill out at, so where do I go from there? We're going to go to the T&M billing rates file. Again, I'm going to take my shortcut because I know I've already got this set up, and hit ST, hit binoculars. And there it is. I've got program manager. I typed in that I've got $100 an hour. SE is 80 and T3 is 55. Over here to the right, I've typed in some budget hours. I don't have to have that, but I was looking at the paperwork that my prime gave me, and they put some hours in, so I'm going to put those hours in also. If you go back to thinking about the contract master file, where we had $100,000 worth of contract value, I want to make sure that I don't overrun the contract value. In addition, there will frequently be hours budgeted, and I'm not allowed to exceed those hours without contacting my prime contractor and requesting a realignment or some kind of change to the contract. I want to make as few of those phone calls as possible if I can, because it's going to delay my payment. It's going to change things around. You know, you got to be thinking about that all the time. Okay, so contract master, labor categories, T&M billing rates. All right, what's our last step in setting up a contract? We're going to go to the contract workforce. The contract workforce, I'm hitting ST and binoculars to find what I've got. These are the people that I've said are authorized to work on this contract. I want to make sure that whoever I list as program manager is, if I'm going to bill at $100 an hour, I want to make sure that program manager is making about $50 an hour or less. There's not a hard and fast rule of thumb, but if I'm trying to guess, I usually say that their pay rate times 2 is my billing rate, or their billing rate divided by 2 is their labor rate, their pay rate. What I'm doing here is I'm going to say, you know, Dana, she's gone. Take her off. And all I did was deleted that individual line. If I deleted the entire thing, it would have deleted all the records. So I'm going to pull these people off. Oops, I'm on a different job now. You know what? I did actually accidentally delete everybody. Well, you know, it happens. Over here to the right where I've got import, I can import from the labor category file but that's actually not going to work. Let me do it a different way. I'm going to go into the employee ID, do a lookup, hit E, capital E, because they start with an E. And I want to get Bill Wilson. He's the program manager. I want to get Kelly Smith. And I can't remember what category she's in, so I'm going to do a lookup here. Don't hit binoculars, hit lookup. And Kelly's a senior engineer. It is frequently case sensitive, so you have to get used to which screens that it's not. And that's a technician. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save. That was kind of funny, wasn't it? Okay, contract master file. Oops, I accidentally clicked it again. Labor category file, T&M billing rates file, and contract workforce. So I have that T&M contract all set up right now. Okay, let's go see what's going to happen. I want to enter some sample transactions for us so you can see how all of this works. The first thing I want to do, though, and we're going to skip this when we do our video, is go under the general ledger. Looks like I have to hit the plus. And I'm going to close the accounting period because I was in period 5 and I want to be in period 6, so I have a clean set of transactions to do this. I'm going to hit test, and I think I better do that journal entry thing. So let me close this out. Oh, it must be one of these kind. Okay. Now that I've done that, I can go ahead and close the accounting period. Also, this will be cut out of the video. Hit test. Everybody's happy. Print. Again, everybody happy. In a minute, this close period is going to light up, and I'm going to say yes. Okay, and we're off. The other thing I'm going to do that's going to need to be excluded from the video is under Payroll and Human Resources. There's a place under Control Files where I choose the period that I'm in, the timesheet period that I'm in. So I'm going to go to that and change this to 5/11 and make this one be I think I want it to be 5/25, but I got to go check. So again, ignore the man behind the screen. Okay, it looks like it's dates. Back here. And I'm going to go ahead and make this 5/25. So let's save that. Okay, so now we're back to the real part. I'm going to close everything back out. So we have a little break for a minute while I fix the thing. All right, we were at contracts. Under setup files, we've set up contract master file. We've set up the labor category file, the T&M billing rates file, and the contract workforce. So now I'm going to go enter a timesheet, show you what the reports look like, see what you think. Plus timesheets. Under timesheets, remember I told you there's all these settings you can ignore. I've already got these set up for us, so all I have to do now is go under Enter, Edit Timesheets. This is if I was going to type in from a paper timesheet. There's also an electronic timesheet system that we can use, but we'll do it this way for our example. Here it's asking me whether I have timesheets in the current or the future period, and normally it's going to be in the current period. I'm working in 1997, so I'm going to go ahead and choose the date that I know I have set up for that. Here in the employee field, remember I said there's binocular, that's if I'm going to find something, but I want to do the lookup. And I know those IDs start with an E, so that's why I'm typing that in. Their timesheet type is regular, and these are biweekly timesheets, so I'm going to say that it's 80 hours. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, hey, Bill, he worked all 80 hours to that job number. If I knew what it was, I could just type it in. This is the job number and the task. And that's the labor task as opposed to the travel task. I've got these suffixes. 11 is accounts receivable, 12 is unbilled accounts receivable, 30 is revenue, 39 is labor at my company site, 40 is labor at my government site or customer site. So I'm going to pull this in. And when I hit tab going across, it chose PM for me. And I don't really want people choosing their own labor category. I want to use the contract workforce to put that control in. It really simplifies our time and makes everything go a lot better. I've got all 80 hours to him. He makes $12 an hour. That's $960. Save. We can go. The next one is E0002, and I happen to know their ID because I might be looking at a paper timesheet, but I don't always have to do it that way. I'm going to do the same thing with Kelly. She's charging the same job. And I've typed in ST01001. When I hit tab, it's going to default her suffix for me. There's a place in the employee master file where we store the information about whether the person works at our company site or at a customer site, because the overhead rates could be different. It also popped in that SE labor category because she's listed on the contract workforce. And I'm going to put that she has 72 hours there. But I'm also going to put that she took a day off. You have to know the codes. This is my chart of accounts. And what I'm looking for is a accrued vacation account because she decided to take a day off. So I type in that charge number just like anything else. And I'll put 8 hours of vacation time. Again, hit save. Okay, my last guy. Roger Kelsey. He's listed as salary exempt. He's making $30 an hour. But you know what? He's so nice. He works extra hours for me all the time. It doesn't make me pay him. So let's just say he worked 92 hours. Still working on the same job number. It defaulted in that information. But let's just say that he worked 40 hours on that job. And then he worked on another job, which I'm going to look up. On this smart card job. And let's say that he worked 42 hours on that. Well, you can see it's correctly split 40 hours at $30 an hour, $1,200 and $1,260. But I don't pay him that much. Oh, the other thing that it's telling me is I've only got 42 hours here and 92 up here. So that additional 10 hours, I'm going to say that he worked on a bid and proposal. If I can find one. There's one, B&P. So his other 10 hours was on a proposal. Okay, right now if I save this timesheet, it's going to try to pay him $2,760. Well, he doesn't make that much. He makes 80 times $30 an hour, or $2,400. So when I hit save, it's going to tell me a couple things. I'm going to pull down this a little bit. Labor cost exceeds salary rates. The auto adjust feature can be used, and then this contract warning date. And that's probably because this bid proposal I had an end date on. Okay, I hit close. When I hit auto adjust, it's going to change his hours down to the $1,200. Okay, there's a reason for that. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to come back into his timesheet and show you what I did. Ignore. Okay, I can, now that I've got some timesheets in there for 525, I'm going to hit binoculars and go in. What I did when I was typing those things in is I hit that we're putting in the entire 50. I was putting in that I was putting 50% into the pay period, which would have been weekly timesheets on a biweekly pay period. But this is actually these are actually biweekly. So now when I hit auto adjust, it's going to correctly put the $2,400 in there. Let's save that. It's telling me my contract end date is earlier than the timesheet date. That's because this is a bid proposal and it probably ended before 25/25. I'm going to ignore it since I'm just doing my training video. Okay, let's go in now, and having entered this, I want to check it out, see how I did. So up here at the top, I can choose the timesheet edit report. There's also a missing timesheet report if I wanted to see who was supposed to have a timesheet that I don't have one keyed in for. Let's go here, and I'm going to hit entry ID of all. I usually do that in case there's different people keying these things in. I can include my labor cost amounts, and I want to see what the money is, but you can set it up so certain people can see the money and others can't. And I'm going to choose pay type totals. That's going to tell me if I had regular, overtime, or whatever. In this case, those 3 timesheets that I typed in, there were only 3, so it didn't matter. The timesheet date, it wants me to tell it. Normally what I would do here is pick a range of dates. And remember, I'm playing it in 2007. I'd go from the day after the end of the last pay period, which was the 11th, so I'd go the 12th, through the 25th. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that I'm including any correcting timesheets that I might have in the middle of that. Okay, I'm going to preview. Up at the top, I've got choices. I can look at some things in Excel, some in PDF, and some in text, but I found the text seems to work better when I'm doing some training information. All this is doing here is showing me the these are the 3 people that I put in. There's the timesheet date, the charge number. This Department 7 is in their employee master file. There's the labor category that came from the contract workforce, and their hours and their dollars. And then down at the bottom it gives me their totals. Okay, let's close that out. Like that, I can also print a timesheet edit by account report, and that would be if I wanted to look at it, which I normally would, and see just kind of scan it and make sure that everybody had a labor category and everybody looks like they're charged right. So I'm going to also include pay type totals. An exception edit. I'm going to click that. An exception edit is going to flag for me that situation where I had that bid proposal number that was past the timesheet, past the end date of the period performance, and it's also going to flag for me that I did an auto adjust on one of those guys. It seems like I run into it more and more that there's situations where some employees get paid overtime some of the time and others don't get paid ever, and it depends on the customer or whatever. So these exception edits are a good way to verify that you got everybody classified right. The other thing that's important to know is if you use an electronic timesheet product, usually you can put in codes in there to set up rules for different groups of people called timesheet classes, and it'll prevent those types of errors. So a little less scanning for that. It says here suppress all labor costs. I like to see everything, so I'm going to put all labor cost on the report. Again, choose here. I'm going to pick the preview and text because it displays easier. I'm going to make it small enough to fit in this window. I thought I was. Anyway, you can see I've got the different people. There's her accrued vacation, the hours flags. Down here, there's a flag called D for Roger Kelsey. So I'm going to go take a look at what D says. At the bottom of the report, it'll tell me that D means labor cost not equal to hours times rate. His labor cost, which would have been 92 hours times $30 an hour, but we did an auto adjustment, and that's why I did it that way. Here's a G code. I think we have a G code also on Roger because he charged to the bid proposal number. There it is. And that one had already ended. Okay. Having done that, let me go ahead and post the labor distribution. We've got formal posting process. You can have 2 accounting periods open at one time in GCS Premier. For example, in this case, I've got June 2007, July 2007. June is the current, and July is the next accounting period, so I can have 2. That also means, though, if I can only have 2 accounting periods open at once, by the time I get to the end of the second month in July, I'm going to need to be opened August 2007. So I've got to make sure that I can close my accounting period by the end date of the next accounting period. And you really have to stay up with that. It's hard to do for the first few accounting periods because you're learning something new and you're trying to figure it out. But it's really going to bite you in the butt if you don't have it right. Post-labor distribution. On here, I do put the accounting period end date if I want to, but I'm just going to put the end date of those timesheets so I have a reference number in there. And I'm just going to hit print and post. And OK, and this is actually updating the general ledger. So when I go look at this, if I went to the general ledger, I'd be able to see it. Let me just show you that. Under general ledger, financial reports and inquiries, general ledger detail report, there is an inquiry screen, but I always have to print the report. I don't seem to have a memory for much anymore at all. Let's look at that job that we just posted to. And hit preview. And this is what I was looking for. This down here, LD01, those are the hours for Roger and for Kelly and for Bill. And I could tie that to the the timesheet report we just ran. Let me just do that. Here in the timesheet edit account by account report, I'm going to have to click include previously posted records in order for it to give me the information that I'm looking for. But this is a good time to show you how this works. Oops. Oh, wrong year. Oh, it's not 527, it's 524. Must type correctly. Okay, that's got me baffled. Let me try a different way. Let's try making it finally. Okay. The timesheet date was 5/25, and it should have picked up before. I'd have to look at it to see why it didn't. What I wanted to show you here, though, was my purpose. Is there's my missile test labor. It's 5475.98. Let me go back and change this around just a little bit differently because that's not really what I wanted. I really want 525 only. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, let me slide this over where you can see it. I've got down here a little bit further. There's the ST001-00139 labor, and it's 3083.48. Let me go see if that matches. Now you can't see it. I should move that where you can see it. There you go. General ledger, financial reports and inquiries. General ledger, this is period 6. Let's preview that. And this is the number I was looking for. 3083.48 is the total. While I'm in here, let me show you one other thing. You see how this is a total for the accounting period. This 10,215 is the balance in the account. Usually when I run this, I click suppress period activity line. And I do that so that I'm just looking at the ending balance, not the individual transactions, but I would have to add these two together to get the 3,083 number. Okay, so we went into timesheets, we put in some timesheets, and now you'd like to see what are my results. Let me show me what you can do. Under revenue, I'm going to go do compute revenue. Every time that I make a change, whether I'm posting transactions or I make a change to the contract master file, whatever it is, I run this compute revenue process. So I'm going to hit process, hit OK, close that down. It was giving me an error message, but I'm going to ignore that. It has nothing to do with what we're working on. Now I can do a job status report. Up here at the top, I've got different reports that I can choose from. So under selections for reports, I can actually choose one I've already saved, but I'm going to show you how to do it a different way. Under contract, I want to do the job that I just set up. And under job summary reports, let's put a 1, meaning the first of the set. My favorite boxes to click are the second and the third one. And now I'm ready to take a look at it, so let's hit preview. What this is showing me is up at the top is the header information, and in the header information, this is all coming from the contract master file. This is in the current period. Those are those timesheets that I just posted. Also, down at the bottom of that section, it shows me 192 hours, which is how much I put in for the 3 of them. It's showing me as I go along. I could have loaded prior year information. Here's my current year, year to date, and contract to date. Over to the right, I've got contract value and some other information. Down at the very bottom, I have what is called revenue, and that is rate times hours. So I'll show you that in just a minute. Let's look at a little more detail. Let me go to the labor detail reports. This is the other one that I really like. It's the first one in the sequence that I'm getting ready to do. I want to show the hours times the billing rate. Under selections for reports, I'm going to print the report that I just did. And let's do a preview. This is what I was looking for. These are the hours that those folks charged on the timesheets that I did a few minutes ago, 192 hours. It's taking 80 hours times the billing rate of $100 an hour, giving me 8,000, so forth and so on. And that's how it's getting. This is my revenue right there. This is how much money I'm getting on the job. There are other reports that we could look at, so I'm going to go back and put these back in order so you'll be able to see a little bit more about what I did. I'm going to keep this report. I'm going to run it at target rate. And there's also a report in here called the T&M sales worksheet, which is really handy because it looks so much like a bill will look. So let's do a selections for reports, STO1, target, all looks good, hit preview. Oh, doesn't like the way I numbered this. This is report number 1. This will be report number 2. This will be report number 3. So will it work now? This is a report we looked at just a few minutes ago. Here I've got some indirect rates applied. The reason I did that is before I did that we were making so much more profit. 30% of this on-site direct labor is $925. 70% of the 3,000 here is seems a bit high. Let me go check that out here in a minute. Anyway, it does calculate your burden rates and comes up with your profit. The second one we looked at just a minute ago, and here's the third one, and this is the one that if you're doing a lot of T&M work, you're going to really like. It has the information from the header here. Here's your billing rate, here's your hours, and here's your current period. Okay. You know what? Let's go do a billing. Hit plus for billing. Go to Setup Files. I didn't review the billing master file, so now's a good time to do that. Here I hit ST to bring up the one that I wanted to look at. These settings are in here for me. The ones that I usually check are suppress none. That means I do want it to print the contract value and the account number at the top. This is probably the most important one when you're first setting up your system, because you're trying to check information you can't even tell what job it's on. So I usually do this as suppress none. And I'm going to just say up at the top if I want to do it. Could be anything, but I'm just typing that in so you'll see what it'll look like. This is a time and materials job, so I can try to click on that button, but it's going to be all grayed out. So I'll click on the T&M. These are the three important things to have checked: bill non-labor, burden non-labor, and print cumulative amounts on billing. Actually, for this, I'm not going to click bill non-labor because that would make it so my consultants might get billed. I am going to print the cumulative hours and amounts on bills. Not going to use the billing rates. If you leave this blank, it'll use the billing rates from the indirect pool file. Let's hit save. Shows here bill number 2 was the last bill that was done, so when it calculates a bill, it's going to be number 3. Back over here to the left, billing, setup files, I've done that. Now I want to produce a contract billing. So the process I'll go through is I'll compute a contract billing. I'd normally do this all in a production mode. I'd enter all my timesheets and I would post them. I would compute revenue. I would check my contract reports. I would come in here and I would compute my contract billings. For right now, I'm just going to do the one. And those capitals are very important. There's a button here you need to pay attention to. Include future period cost. Remember I said earlier that in the case we're working in, the current period is the month of June 2007. Future would be 2007 in July. I don't want to click that button unless I'm behind in the first couple months, which does happen, and I need to bill for July. So right now I'm just going to leave. Again, if you don't know, use the defaults. Let's hit process. Okay. So I've calculated a bill. Now I want to see what it looks like. There's different ways you can do it, but I usually go straight to the billing edit file. Billing edit is where it's calculated. We'll be able to look at it before we do anything. If something's not calculating right here, though, you really don't want to just type over it, because all you're doing is fixing it for that bill. You're not fixing the problem. I told you it would be bill number 3. It got that from the last bill number in the billing master file. I'm going to put in a date of bill of, let's make it 061507. And I'm going to the labor billings tab because it's a T&M. I can go there. And it's going to show me how many hours it's trying to bill. By darn if that didn't come straight off the timesheets. Does that make me happy or what? So 80 times 1,000 or $100 an hour is $8,000. Hit select. Selected means protected. That means that if somebody else is doing some processing and they do some calculations, it's not going to overwrite my bill. So protect yourself. Hit save. Okay, now that I've computed the bill, I went to the billing edit report. I made sure it looked right. I added a bill date and I clicked the box called selected. There are ways to do this in more of a production mode, but just for the example we're using, we'll go with that. Let's do print 1035 billings. The 1035 is what you think of as the continuation sheet on a standard government billing. There's a cover sheet called the 1034, and then there's the continuation sheet called the 1035, which gives the detail. So we'll just take a look at that. On the start date of the billing, I'm going to type in, remember I said that that was May 25th was the beginning of that sheet. And under selection, I'm just going to pick the one that I want. Let's hit preview. And there's my bill. Up at the top, again, this information is coming from the contract master file. That's where we typed that in. Remember we had a little asterisk at the beginning of our name? Well, it didn't print that. It just knows about that. This is the description we typed in a minute ago in the billing header. We typed in missile test T&M. It's pulling this PM Program Manager. That was my labor category description. That's why I did that PM colon, so I could see exactly what code it is. The reason I did that is if I have to go back and change it, it's all handy right there. Rate times hours, $15,960, and it's adding to my cumulative. And so there's my information. Okay, let's close that out. There are ways that I can produce this in an Excel billing, so let's take a look at that. Deltek went to a lot of trouble to use 2007 Excel and come up with a method of integrating the Deltek GCS Premier product with Excel 2007. You know why they did it? Because the bills they produce normally are just not that pretty. And the more we do this, the more we want our logo. We want to choose our own fonts and different things like that. I'm going to click up here at the top to Premier Billing. And it's got these special add-ins. So let's hit Generate Invoices. I hope it's thinking. There we go. Over to the right, it's got this add-in, ST0100101, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Generate. And there's the bill, and you can see you can make it pretty. There are also other fields that I could add on to this billing, but the main thing I wanted you to see is that you can create Excel bills with this, and then you'd have something that you could save and keep track of. And I've added my logo up here. You can add your own logo. Down at the bottom, some people will add comments like certification statements. You can have those set up different for different billings. Okay, so let's hit Save. I'll go ahead and save that bill. And we'll close out of Excel. Alright, so I did my billing, made it pretty, saved it. Now I can print and post the contract billing journal. I always like to look at things before I print them because it's easier to fix before you do it than it is the other. Very important to know. You know, in QuickBooks and other systems, I love it that you can go back and change things, but I also hate it that you can go back and change things because you can create errors that weren't there, or you can have something that you've done very carefully and somebody else will hit a button to make a change not realizing what it's going to do to your information. Let's preview then. This is the billing journal. It's telling us it's in period 6, sequence number 1. There's the name, the job name, the date on the bill number, and the dollar amount. Like that. I'm going to hit print and post. Okay, what happens with this billing now? Well, a couple things. When I posted, it posted to the Open Accounts Receivable file. So it's going to show up on the aging report for me. It also posted to the general ledger. So let's look at aged accounts receivable, make sure I'm telling them the truth. I like to do this one by account. And I'm going to go down to the bottom, ST01. Is it making your head spin? There it is, $15,960. It's also in the general ledger. Financial reports and inquiries, general ledger detail report. We talked about this a minute ago when I showed you some labor I had. I like to hit suppress current period activity line. My selection, ST, you know what, I'm going to do a little different. Selection, range, ST01001. 11, because that's my accounts receivable report, ST01001. I'm going to put 45 because I've got suffixes and they go actually all the way up to 56. Let's do preview. What I wanted to show you here, there's accounting period 6, AR1. There's the voucher number. In this case, what we were talking about is the bill number. There's my 15,000 right there. When I posted the billing journal, it debited the accounts receivable account or suffix, and it credited down here the unbilled accounts receivable. So right now I've got $15,960 sitting in my unbilled account. I care about that. You know why? At the end of the month, I want to make sure, did I bill everything? So there's a program you can run to check that out. It's under Reports and Inquiries. Oops. Unbilled AR report. I'm going to unclick this, unclick that, unclick that. And let's hit preview. Ignore that. And again, slide down to ST01. There it is. And it shows that I have $15,000 worth of unbilled, but it's negative. That's good. That doesn't mean I've overbilled. It means I've under-revenued. Let's go back over here to the contracts. And we ran earlier this revenue and reporting process called compute revenue. We did a job status report, but what we didn't complete is printing and posting the revenue journal. We're going to do that because we want to see what happens when we post that. I think what it's going to do is it's going to credit the revenue account and debit unbilled AR. So let's take a look. I think the only thing I've got in there is the one job. Let's preview it. Here's my current period revenue in period 6. There's ST01. That's what I was looking for. These costs on the revenue summary, I've got current period here, and then I've got year-to-date cost. So the cost is going to be, this is the direct labor for the year plus applied overhead, G&A at target rates. And then it's calculating how much, well, that's a profitable job, isn't it? Okay. It's taking revenue minus cost equal fee. Let's go ahead and hit print, post, hit OK, close this down. Let's go back over to the general ledger because I might get confused on some other things, but I always get it when I see it on the general ledger. Again, general ledger detail report. Let's go over here. I always like suppressing the current period activity report because I don't know how many times I looked at that and I'd spend time chasing something around that really wasn't a problem. It's just the way I pulled the report. So I have created certain ways that I do things. There are always other ways that other people do them, but mine seem to work fine for me, so we'll just keep going that way. And put 56 here just in case. We're in current period 6. Starting period is 01. I always leave it that way so it goes back to the beginning of the year. The reason I do that is if I just print period 6, I'm for sure going to have a question about an earlier period, so I just think it's easier to do that. Let's hit print, preview, and text. I'm going to slide this in where we can see it. There's suffix 11. Remember, that was the billing journal. The offset to that was here. Now, there's my sales journal, and now my unbilled receivable is 0. That means I've everything that I billed, I was able to pick up revenue for. In the revenue account now, I've got $15,000 for the current period. What else does that tell me? I can go to the income statement now and think about it. I've only put in a timesheet for one job and I've only done revenue for one job. So here what I can do, when I pick this out, it's going to show me just how much I've made on that one job. I was wrong. I had some other revenue posted in there. But here is the here is my income statement with the current period and the year to date. Write down that number 1,844,614.66. I'm going to minimize this because I'll come back to it in just a minute. Click any place else so I can get out of here. Let's go to contracts. Let's look at revenue reports. In addition to the revenue report that I just looked at, here's another one that I find really handy. And these are called revenue summaries. I'm going to combine tasks. No, I'm not. Let's take a look at this one. I'm going down to that ST01 again because we want to look and find a number that we're familiar with. 15,000, that's how much revenue I have for the current period. Slide up and you can see I've got a revenue column right here for year-to-date revenue. That's at 18,144.66. So you know what I like about that? I can go to the income statement and I can see I've got $1.8 million worth of revenue, but if somebody says, what jobs was that on? I've got the detail all right here. so I can answer some questions very quickly for the boss. I can also do combined tasks, hit preview, take a look, and by job I can say how much money I made on each of the 1.84 million in revenue. I can say how much it was on each job. So I can look at the big ones and say, okay, it was for job 1000 and so forth. The other thing I like doing with this revenue summary is there's a profit percent column down here. This does contain test data. See, there's a lot of positives and negatives, but it's showing me how much I made on each job. When I'm going through to close out the month, I print this report and I look for anything that's wacky. Like example here, 7904 shows I'm losing 100% on that. Well, I can tell you right now while we're doing that, there's no contract value, so it's not picking up any revenue. Getting this report right takes a little bit of work, but once it is, every single month you run through a standard process and you can get good information about that. Okay, well, let's go back to where we started. We started today with contracts, so I'm going to click in there. Close everything back up. Go to Contracts, Plus, and Setup Files. It wasn't really that hard what we did. We started with the Contract Master file. That's where we set up the contract. We went to the Labor Category file. That's where we set up Program Manager, Senior Engineer, and a Technician. We went to the T&M Billing Rates file. That's where we set up the billing rates for those 3 labor categories. We went to the Contract Workforce file. That's where we said Bill is the Program Manager, Kelly's the Senior Engineer, and Roger's the Technician. After we went through those 3 or 4 steps, we went to Timesheets. Under Timesheets, we went and entered a timesheet for them. I showed you how that we charged the time to the job. I showed you how the hours went in, and we could have a line for the job and a line for Kelly's 8 hours worth of vacation. I also showed you how that Roger was kind enough to work 92 hours, but I'm only paying him for 80, and it automatically auto-adjusted for that information. I printed a report to check out my work, and I posted it. After that process, we went to the contracts again under revenue, and we calculated the revenue and printed some reports. Remember, under the reports, I had different ones that I could choose, and I showed you some favorite ones I can save those settings for, so I can print those whenever I need to. After that, we went over to the billing side. Under setup files, I had to go to the billing master file, make sure that record was set up. We saw that it was bill number 2, and we saw that it was set up as a time and material contract and how we wanted the bill to calculate. We went through the normal billing process. Under contract billings, we ran compute contract billings, and then we went to the billing edit file and checked it out. We selected the billing and we went to, which was up here, the print 1035 billings, and you saw that it has a basic billing that you can check out, but when I wanted to make it pretty and add my logo, I went to Premier Billing, which allows me to go into Excel and add my logo, change some fonts if I wanted to add some information or add some kind of statement like I hereby certify. I can put those things in. And I posted the billing journal. After that, we looked on an AR aging and saw that the billing was there. And we also went to the unbilled, which is my way of checking and saying, did I pick up everything? Did I bill for everything? And saw that we hadn't posted the revenue. From there, we went back over to contracts under revenue reporting, and we posted the revenue. Posting the revenue credits the revenue accounts and debits unbilled. After that, we could see from another check in the process that we had billed for everything that we were able to bill for at that time. We also took a look at the contract and revenue cost summaries, where we could print other information to talk to us about our job. So the detail of what was on our income statement we could prove from this contract revenue summary. We printed an income statement, showed how the revenue on the income statement of 1.84 million agreed to the detail on this contract revenue summary. But you know what? I haven't shown you the best thing. You got to see this. You got to see this. This is why everybody buys Deltape GCS Premier. Inside General Ledger, whenever I set up a new contract, it automatically goes over to this chart of accounts file. This is really the mapping for how things end up on certain reports. We talked about STO1. There's a revenue accounts receivable account called suffix 11. unbilled receivable, 30 for contract revenue. And then the one we've been charging our cost into is suffix 39. It tells me here that it's a contract account. That tells the system how to calculate certain things, and the thing we're going to calculate is indirect rates. Under my indirect rates, I also have certain indirect pools, one of which might be G&A. Let's pick something else. Vacation expense is one of my indirect pools, and it goes to a pool account called Fringe. Let's go over and take a look at indirect pools. These indirect pools are set up when you set up your system, and we work with you to set that up the way that you want it to be. But normally there's Fringe, overhead, and G&A, and the click boxes for how we set that up, what we do is talk to you about what you want and figure out what those answers should be and help you get that set up so you don't have to learn all of this at once. Then I've got a Fringe pool, I had a Fringe pool, an overhead pool, and a G&A pool. When I get to the end of the month, I will have posted all my costs, all my labor, all my accounts payable. Will have entered my cash receipts to receive payments on billings. I will have entered any journal entries that I knew about, made accruals, whatever else I need to do. As I'm processing my payroll, it would have accrued leave. And now I come out here and print this indirect pool report. Let's hit a preview. The only cost I've got for this month are those 3 timesheets that I entered, so that's why we're not seeing anything right here in the current period. But when I go down, these are the accounts assigned to the Fringe pool. It's calculating my Fringe for me. I'm thinking that looks a little low. It should normally be about 30%, but that's because I don't have anything posted in the current period. Down here, I've got my current period direct labor amount. That's going to include the 3 timesheets that I put in, but also some other ones that I had posted earlier. On overhead, it's going to calculate for me my company overhead and my these are non-labor accounts, and I've also got my overhead base is going to be direct labor plus bid and proposal and IR&D labor. G&A is going to be my general administrative cost plus Fringe on G&A labor, my other G&A labor like professional fees, bank charges, so forth. The Fringe on bid and proposal labor, and it's going to come up for me with a total G&A rate. In this case, it calculated 21.14%. G&A normally is going to run, depending on your company size and what you've got going on, between 8 and 15%. You don't want it to go much lower than 8 because that means you're probably not paying yourself for something you need to have in your rates. We help you with the structure of setting up your indirect rates. We review it to make sure that it's compliant with DCAA, and we also sit back and do a little business discussion about, do you have lots of locations, where are you going in the future, what kind of work are you going to bid in the future. But the nice thing about it is every single month as part of the month-end closing, you're going to calculate your rates and take a look at them and be able to have, if you want to, load budgets in there against them and see where you're going. So today we've done several things. You saw some contracts, how to set up a contract, how to do a billing, how to enter a timesheet, how to get your indirect rates. And for a quick show, that's the main things I wanted you to see. Solvability does work with you in getting your GCS Premier system set up. We've got, I've been working in government contracting over 25 years, and I work with a lot of small businesses trying to figure out how to explain to them how they want everything to work, and then I help you set it up the way you want it to work. But always as part of a learning process so that I help you get it set up, but it's your system, and you can carry it forward. So thanks so much for your attention today, and I'm glad that you took the time to sit with us through this today. Thank you.